Please welcome our next session, AI Synthetic Panels, the real expiration date on data quality.
Hi everyone, I am Rastislav. I am a co-founder and CEO of GroupSolver. Think of us as a AI-enabled online survey platform. We started doing AI and large language models 10 years ago before it was a thing, so maybe 5 years too early. But I have a unique position because actually most of the money my company makes is not from just technology. I actually work with clients, the brands, and agencies to deliver the insights. So we do market research studies. So I sit in a kind of two different places. I have one foot in the technology space, and my other foot is in market research. So I'm going to do something different today. You all are researchers. You like data. So I'm going to show you some data, because I'm a curious person. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit of a background about what I think matters when it comes to synthetic data. But we're going to dive into an illustrative case study. We ran a case study because we are curious. I wanted to know how good synthetic data can be, replacing humans completely. What do you get? And I'm going to share with you not just the results. I'm going to share with you how we built the case study so you know exactly what we did. You get to see what humans said, what synthetics said, and you make your own conclusions, how much you want to believe, how much you think is hype, how much you think is reality. And then hopefully this will stimulate a good conversation with yourself and on your flight back home and with your teams. I mean, I have no horse in this race. I'm pretty confident in what I believe is going to happen with synthetic data. I think it's a very exciting technology. But at the end of the day, we all make our own conclusions. I will also talk a little bit about economics, because when I talk to our clients, they're all excited about the potential, and they ask us, well, how much does it cost? I mean, the promise is cheaper, better, faster, right? But let's just kind of work out some, not perfect economic case study for what the synthetic data can do for market researchers. And then I'm going to share with you a couple of final thoughts I have on the topic. All right, so when we talk about synthetic panels, why is it exciting? Well, the promise of synthetic panels is always on. You don't have to commission a research. You just go to a computer or ask those questions. It's immune to fraud. I think this is the first time for me in SampleCon. There's a lot of conversations about fraud, bad quality data. The idea is that when you have built your synthetic panel, if you use a good data for it, you don't have to worry about who's your sample provider. Is it a click farm? Is it a bot or whatnot? You already have it. And then is it accurate? What I'm going to talk about today mostly is about accuracy, but I want to add another dimension to it, which is time. We do a lot of research, and even if we get accurate data, we also want to make sure that the results, the insights we deliver to our customers are going to prove right over time. So the dimension of time to me is very important in anything we do when it comes to synthetic panels. And of course, we'll talk about a little bit of economics. Is it worth spending our money on it? So what I mean by accuracy, if you're an academic, you have a million different ways of methodologies of comparing quant data to each other, how accurate it is and everything. Broadly speaking, to me, accuracy is how close does a synthetic synthetic panel get to what we know is a human response, right? Like I said, I'm curious, and the reasons why we ran this case study is I wanted to know what happens when you have humans and then synthetics, what happens with them. And then again, the degree of what happens to that result over time. So in our case study, we reran the same study a little bit later. Ran one study back in June last year, and we just reran it in February, March, and wanted to see what happens over time. And as far as cost effectiveness goes, it's just simple economics. Is it worth investing into an asset? Because to me, synthetic panel is an asset. Market research, ad hoc research, oftentimes is an expense. You run it when you need it, right? But when you build synthetic panel, it takes effort, takes time, takes money. It's an asset. Hopefully, you get to use it over time, replacing some of that ad hoc research with your use of your panel. All right. So let's dive into the data. And by the way, I was really hoping that by Wednesday morning, my jet lag would wear out. It did not. Thanks, Pure Spectrum last night. I tend to speak longer, more when I'm tired, so please boom me off the stage if it goes too long. I know you have planes to catch, so apologies. So, case study. We ran 2 different identical studies, exactly same questions. What we then did, using those humans who well, we didn't use humans, that's a bad thing to say. Using the data from the humans, we built fairly simple avatars for synthetics. And then we ran exactly same survey with those avatars, and we recorded the data. What we looked at was how different the data was, humans versus synthetics, and what happened over time. I think it's fine. It's fun, it's fascinating. It's a kind of case study that we need to have. What was the topic? I picked the most boring topic you can think of. We asked Gen Zs who have not yet moved out of their house, they're not living on their own, and we asked them things about why you're still living with your parents. And since you don't know anything about chores, we're going to ask you about your preferences for home cleaning brands. Because if you're P&G, you should be talking to those Gen Zs about your products right now. When we built the panels for the 2 studies, remember one was back in June last year, the other one late February, we tried to keep those demographics roughly the same so that we would keep at least comparable, both human data and also avatars. So you can see the statistics, I'm not going to read through them, but they were pretty consistent between the 2. So if there are any differences in the data, I would say you cannot attribute them to the different composition of the sample. And so the other question I want to show you is, want to talk about is how did we build our avatars? We did not attempt to build a perfect avatar. Like this is a simple, very basic one, some demographic, a little bit behavioral data. You can do way more with it. But the point of this study was not to build the most accurate avatars. It was just it was an experiment to see what happens when you run them, and then just, things can get better from it. Based on accuracy. So you can read an example of a prompt that we did for the avatars. We made the avatars to remember the answer they gave us. It was a long survey, longish. There was a lot of questions, and we wanted to make sure that the avatars were consistent with their answers. So they remember what they told us, so they wouldn't give us inconsistent answers throughout the survey. All right, so let's talk about the data. We asked both choice questions, close-ended, and open-ended questions. And I'm only going to show you a few so we can dive into what we have seen. So the first question was, your typical brand awareness, from awareness all the way to which is your favorite brand. So this is the question where we ask humans, remember, Gen Zs whose moms are doing the laundry probably still, what is your preferred laundry detergent brand? I mean, look at the data. I mean, there's nothing surprising here. The Tide is #1 and Gain is #2. I do want to point out something here. You see Downy. Downy does not make laundry detergent, right? They don't. Shout doesn't make laundry detergent, but they get some votes from people. I'll get to that in a minute, why this is important, right? Okay, so that was back in June. Now think about what happened since last June until now. I'm going to show you next the data from like 3 weeks ago. So think about what do you expect is going to happen when I'm going to click this button. Right? Who would expect the data to be completely all over the place? Who expects some changes but roughly stable? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So, humans, our Gen Zs are still liking Tide, just about the same percentage. Gain has gained, no pun intended. If you watch TV, you've seen a lot of commercials for Gain. I can understand why Gain would do better. Arm & Hammer went a little bit down, but roughly speaking, there are some changes. You can start making you can deep dive what happened, but at the end of the day, this is kind of normal looking data, right? Would you agree? So then what did our avatars tell us? Remember, those were built from the same people. This was actually in October. We took a few months before we ran this for with AI avatars. Tide wins, Gain is second, pretty good. What I noticed is a couple of things. Humans give us a pretty long tail of answers. You have these small brands that get some answers. You're getting hardly anything here. You get a little bit of Arm & Hammer. Also, AI is smart enough to know that Shout and Downy don't make detergent. You will not get any answers at all. There's zero intuition. Like when your human is thinking about, is it really a Downy detergent? If it was, would I buy it? AI doesn't think like that. It knows. All right, I'm going to show you what happened 3 weeks ago with the same data. What would you expect would be the results? Similar to what humans did? Yeah? All right. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. Our hands are tired. This is what actually happened. All right? Tide did better. Gain disappeared. Suddenly, we have 20% wanting to buy Arm & Hammer detergent. Like, what? All right, so the only thing that changed, and then the methodology stayed exactly the same, and we are using OpenAI for our Gen AI. We don't know what happened in the black box of OpenAI, how they changed the model, what they trained on. Same question, same everything. You get a very different answer, right? So we also try to do open-end. See what happens to when you ask people without these kind of easy to understand questions. Now, before I explain this, what happened with open ends, Group Solver does open ends a little bit differently than most of your surveys. We take the open-ended answer, break it down into its parts, and then we turn them into a survey question. So if somebody says that what's most important for you when you choosing your brand for home products is reliability, well, other people said it was actually safety. Would you agree with that? So we're actually using that to validate those answers in real time, which is why you can get these statistics. We call it support strength. What you see here is a summary of what humans told us. They talk about reliability, being effective in a house cleaner or laundry, safety, eco-friendly, having non-toxic ingredients, firm having good reputation, being affordable. They want a good aroma and good reviews, right? Makes sense. Now, what's behind these, 10 of these? We have 310 human Gen Zs gave us roughly 285 unique answers. The most frequently repeated word-by-word answer was, I don't know. None of the others have more than like 2 or 3. And they told us things like, whatever my mom recommends, humans do say that, So there's much more granularity behind it that you can click through. Well, I'm not going to waste your time with that. Now, what do you think happens when we ask the same question of the humans a few weeks ago? Kind of the same story. You expect some changes, but you expect stable, right? Still it's about reputation, reliability. Eco-friendliness went down. Do we know what happened in this country in the last little bit? Maybe not as much of a focus of what we thought. Aroma went down, quality went up, safety went up. But kind of like, expected. Now, what happens when we ask the same question of the avatars? Last year, this is the picture. Now, you notice that there's a very kind of like zigzaggy pattern. And I'll explain to you why that zigzaggy pattern happened. Remember I told you that the 300 humans gave us roughly 300 unique responses? The avatars gave us 39. And of those 39 responses, a lot of them were a combination. It was something like, the brand I would trust would have to be reliable, effective, and safe. And various combinations of the two. So we actually only got 11, if I'm counting right, 7 or 8 unique answers that we received. And they were kind of like very, very binary if you look at it in nature. You're either yes or no. And remember, the avatars went through the same process. Do you agree with, your brand needs to be reliable? So same thing as humans did. So okay, but they got most of the answers right. What happens when we rerun it a few weeks back? Magic. Safety is very important. Eco-friendliness went down, so that's consistent. But still did not tell us anything about non-toxic ingredients. Like, I want something to be safe around my pets and children. Did not mention anything about smelling good or aroma. And suddenly, reputation doesn't matter. Okay. All right, again, I don't have horse in this race. I know we could have built those avatars to be more consistent, more complex. We could have spent a 1-hour-long AI-aided interviews and get a much more sophisticated response. But the reason why we kept it simple is because we wanted to make sure that we can expose some of the issues that are happening, things that are happening that you don't have control over, which is in a black box, so to see that variability. Now, the best slide from the data, I'm leaving to the end. I'm very proud of it. We convinced the avatars, the AI, in the last 6 months that our surveys are absolutely amazing. Every single one of them found our surveys to be excellent. Sucky humans still think it's only 1.59. But all jokes aside, why would AI care about the survey? The real answer is, I don't know, I don't care. I'm an AI, I should not give you any answer. But the issue with AI is it will give you an answer if you ask. It might be 51% certain of something. It will not say, oh, I don't know. It'll tell you whatever the 51% certainty is. Well, just kind of a little fun. All right. So let's talk about economics. Now, I'm not in the business of creating synthetic panels, but I have a good idea how you would build one. I mean, we build them, but not really for sale. So I wanted to just kind of run through the economics. Kind of what is the promise of it, building an asset, that you can use over and over. So let's say you do what we didn't do. You build your synthetic respondents by interviewing your humans for an hour. You spend real amount of money on them. You're not paying them $5 incentive. You're paying them $50 to be there for an hour and getting all the questions answered about how they believe the world should function, to how they think, I don't know, how macho they are, I don't know. There's a bunch of questions you can ask to get a better persona. So let's say you do this, you spend $20,000 on it. You probably want a data scientist to help you build it, make more sense from the data, so you pay them some money. And then you're going to have to host the data somewhere, right? It's not free. So like I just used the cost that it costs for you to run group solver. Roughly, call it plus minus $30,000 to $50,000 to build you a very good synthetic panel that you can use over and over. But you don't spend any money on running it, essentially. It's free. You pay some money to run it, but essentially it's free. On the other hand, you can keep running surveys like we always do. You pay, you survey people when you want them. You pay them $5 incentive. You spend some money on the analysts to create those surveys, check for quality, data, blah, blah, blah. It's call it 5,000 plus minus. It can be 5,000, it can be 7.5, depends on the topic. So I'm an economist by trade. So I'm just looking at simple break-even economics. How many surveys do you have to replace to invest in a synthetic panel? You can get somewhere between like 5, 7. Again, depending on a topic, it can be great investment or it might be not a good one. Okay, so I have a time telling me 4.5 minutes to go. Excellent. So maybe I can just talk about some final thoughts here. I think it boils down to the matter of trust. Yeah, the reason why I showed you this very simple case study is to highlight the idea is that we are in market research industry. We are paid to be conservative and paid to be curious about the data and be skeptical. If we don't trust the data, whether it's from fraud or because we don't know what the black box model behind it is doing, you're not going to trust. So the industry, if we're going to use synthetic panel data, there has to be absolute level of transparency so that we know how to check the data. We need to know what goes into the sausage. Otherwise, you cannot go to your client and say, trust me, out of these 10 concepts, go to the market with concept number 3, because you just don't know. The other thing I want to go back to the Downy, the detergent. This is AI, artificial intelligence, not artificial intuition. When you ask humans, you can say they lie. I don't think it's a lie. Yeah, there's always fraud, right? Let's put those lies aside. People have feelings. When we do market research, we're not asking the respondents to do math problems unless you are doing fraud detection, right? You ask them, how do you feel about this concept? What would you do? Those are the kind we are all about open ends. Those are the kind of questions we are asking. What are your thoughts on this? We're asking them to feel. AI does not feel. It will give you an answer they think is most logical binary answer to finish the sentence. But that's not what we do in market research. Then it's all about economics, right? And so the last two points I have, they're getting the economics right. And then last point, they are related. Right now, you have to do quite a few surveys before your validity of synthetic panel expires, because humans change over time. We update our thoughts. Elections happen. March Madness happens. You don't know what commercials they're going to see. You train you spend money, train your panel, your synthetic panel. You have to keep retraining it. Spend more money on it. So what's the expiration date? We don't know. It just depends on the topic. Like if you are studying, thoracic surgery, it probably doesn't change from day to day. If you're researching trends on, pop music, that changes every day, right? So you have to retrain more often. So getting the economics right, we'll get there. But I think we need to think about not just about accuracy, high level, but thinking about what is the business case for me to use those synthetic panels. And what can impact the economics of synthetic panel is what I learned in this conference. This is the first time at the conference for me. If a trust, based on the survey that Sin did, in synthetic panel is right here, right now, right? And a trust in human data is here, but it is falling because we are not solving the issue of the fraud. The synthetic panels, and I'm sure we're going to hear about it coming after me, is getting better and better. I mean, you have to assume technology is going to get better. We're going to figure some of these things out. We're going to figure out the right use cases. But the economics and trust for the synthetic panels is going to only improve for the right use cases if we don't solve the problem of fraud and mistrust in the click farms. Those things are going to start getting pretty damn close. And at some point, there will be use cases where you say, I don't want to go through the trouble of having to figure out which panel provider I'm getting through, and then I invest in good human data, build good panel, and I'm going to live with inaccuracy for some of my research. So, Greg, you were talking about this is the game over type of situation for the industry, synthetic panels. Maybe they are not, but in conjunction with the fraud issue, what says your t-shirt, the two together might actually be a kind of like house is on fire, let's stop watering the lawn type of situation. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. With 12 seconds left, thank you so much for your attention.